This episode is brought to you by Elevate OS, the only all-in-one community operating system. Elevate OS transforms property management, combining resident engagement, reservations, rent payments, maintenance, and concierge services into a single super app. It also uniquely integrates access control, intercoms, package lockers, and thermostats, eliminating app fatigue and redefining modern apartment living. Visit elevateos.com/MMN for a free demo and see how they can help you level up your operations. Welcome to another episode of the Multifamily Collective. I have a question for you. Do you think that cutting people off in the middle of a conversation is enthusiasm for the conversation, or is it disrespect? Have you ever been in a meeting where you're attempting to articulate something, you're answering a question, you're otherwise responding to something, and you get cut off by somebody? And in some cases, you lose your complete train of thought, or in other cases, there's a sense of frustration and disrespect that you have to contend with as you continue forward in a conversation. In my head, there are people out in the world, and this is not a judgment, it's just one guy's opinion. People out in the world that just naturally just cut people off in the middle of a sentence. They have something already formulated in their head, and they introduce that into the conversation as if they are finishing your sentence, as if their punchline, crescendo, conclusion to what you're trying to say is what should rule the day or steer the conversation. I was raised in a world where you let the other person speak, and as soon as they're done speaking, then you can respond. And they do the same thing for you. There's a courtesy. Now, this isn't a professional setting. When you're out in a social setting, I think the same tendency, the same social awareness should exist. But there are times where you're bantering back and forth and you do cut people off, and it's not in an attempt to hijack a conversation. It's rather just a normal course of conversation. But I still think the same rules apply. I was just raised in a way that you respected the people you're having a conversation with, and the respect came through in the way of allowing them to speak to the end of their sentence, and then you get your turn to respond. Now, I'm not sitting in this chair right here today, what is it, March 16th, 2025, suggesting to you that I am, that I exercise this principle with perfection. I don't. I cut people off in the middle of a conversation, but I do intentionally make every attempt to let people finish their sentences before I respond to them. But I do mess it up from time to time, but I still think and I still believe in the rule of letting people speak. Imagine the thing that I think that gets sacrificed in a conversation when people cut each other off is that when someone feels disrespected, there are chemicals that present in the mind, cortisol especially, it sort of hijacks one's ability to think. It goes into fight or flight. It goes into protection mode. And what could have otherwise been a very productive conversation gets hijacked, and the best ideas don't come out because there is no mutual respect governing the conversation. That's what I think gets missed a lot of times. If you're in a brainstorming session and you're trying to present an idea and you're trying to get it done in full, that particular full flushed out idea might be the catalyst for an even better idea, but it didn't get out of your mouth completely, so somebody else didn't get to riff off of that and create a better idea. And then that person who was cut off tends to shell up, especially those introverts out there. They kind of shell up. They're not people who are potentially not courageous enough to say, you know what, let me finish my thought before you chime in, which is completely appropriate. But there are people out there that don't. They just clam up, shell up, and they stop contributing. You've seen it a million times. My imagination does me. You've been sitting in a meeting and you watch somebody just shrink down. Body language and all, they shrink down and they stop sharing. So my encouragement to you, if you're a leader, a couple of things. If you're a leader and you have a propensity to do this, stop. Just stop. Do everything in your power to stop. Get yourself in the habit of listening to people full sentence, full stop, before you make a contribution to the conversation. And if you see somebody cut somebody off, have the courage, and that person doesn't have the courage to stand up for themselves, and I don't mean that in a discounting way, they're just not courageous enough to do it for them. I'd like to hear what you have to say, Sarah. I'd like to hear what you have to say, John. Let's please complete your thought. Okay, go ahead, John. Go ahead. Make your contribution. And then have the other person who started to cut a person off finish their thought as well. They need to finish their thought. But I think what I'm saying here is sometimes it's okay for a leader to cut someone off who consistently and persistently cuts other people off in the middle of a conversation. That's the only time in my mind it's appropriate, because you're coming almost in defense of the person who needs to have their voice heard. That's it. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon.